I was sort of thinking about today, for me, the evolution of this committee, as a professional who sort of works in this profession, has known this organization for most of my career, sort of inherently, I sort of know what this organization does and sort of what they're all about, and do my own part to sort of tell people about it. But I think, the formation of this committee is to sort of make sure that board members and committee members do really understand what's going on. Obviously, all the work is done by staff, and our job as a board or a committee is to sort of advise and provide perspective and give some wind to the sails of the committee and what they're trying to do on behalf of the organization. But also, it's important enough for us to know intimately about what's going on. Every now and then, there's some funding requests or things like that PlanRVA needs, to actually go ahead and start applying for. So we really do understand what is going on and the importance of engagement and being sort of out in the community. And then the one thing I always sort of think about too is sort of who the target market is, who the target audience is, when I think about engagement at Timmons Group and who we're trying to sort of be speaking to. And in this case, PlanRVA, the stakeholder group is diverse. It's a really diverse stakeholder group that we need to sort of be part of. So all of that to say is this committee is important. Having the ability and the resources for PlanRVA to reach different stakeholders is extremely important if we're going to be successful in what we do. So even though staff is doing all the work, I really do value your time and your effort and your commitment to the committee to chime in every month or so and sort of tell us what you think. So I know Martha sort of put the full agenda together, but I also thought we ought to go around the room and just sort of introduce each other so people sort of know a little bit more about each other, so we can roll up our sleeves and sort of get to know each other a little bit. So Brent, start with you.
Sure, I'm Brent Chambers. I'm an Ashland resident of 21 years, and I'm on the Ashland Planning Commission. And I've been part of PlanRVA for roughly 2.5 years.
Perfect, thank you. Milton?
I'm Milton Hathaway from New Kent. I'm on the Planning Commission representing District 3. This is actually my second stint. I served for 12 years, back from 1992, I believe it was, starting. I've been very interested in planning. I followed the Richmond Regional Planning District for years, and so to have an opportunity to see this has just been really exciting.
Welcome. Please, Holly, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Holly Gordon. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at PlanRVA. I think I missed several of you at the last meeting where I was traveling. So I'm, 9 months into my job here. And so while I'm not new anymore, because I haven't seen a whole year, I think there's some things that you learn even in seeing an entire cycle. But I'm not new to community engagement, not new to Richmond. I've been working kind of in the nonprofit sector and small business and community engagement, communications, operations work for about 22 years. So I'm very happy to be here with all of my fellow transportation and planning nerds. I'm also a huge bike advocate in my free time as well.
Good morning, I'm Martha Schickel. I'm the Executive Director here at PlanRVA, and happy to have so many people at our committee meeting this morning.
I'm Janice Scott, I'm the Board Relations Manager, and again, happy to see so many people here and we have a quorum, so. We can get those minutes approved.
Hi everyone, my name is Cameron George. I am the citizen representative for the City of Richmond. I've lived here for about 8 or 9 months now. I work at DHCD in the Department of Housing and Community Development in the Virginia Lottery Building. So super excited to be here, first meeting. Kind of excited to see what this is about.
How you doing? My name's Larry Ledbetter. I'm a resident of Hanover County. Been on the Planning Commission this is my 13th year. So I've been on the Planning Commission. I'm also a commercial contractor, do work in the city all around the region. So I really appreciate the opportunity to work with y'all and learn what this is all about.
Jessica Schneider, newly elected Chesterfield Board Supervisor. And what, 5.5 months now? I don't know, it's
Feels like 5.5 years.
Yeah, I know, I chose to be on this, just because I think that it's so important. Community outreach and engagement is, I think, where we succeed. If we engage the communities and the people that we're affecting, that's where we succeed. And so I think the more we can do that, especially regionally, that's awesome in my mind. So thank you.
Frank Petrowski, I chair the Chesterfield County Planning Commission, representative of the district. It's my second term on the Planning Commission, but my rookie year here for PlanRVA. And by day, I'm a technologist. I'm a director of strategy and business development for a custom software company called Data Directions.
I'm Phil Riggin. I'm a transportation planner here at PlanRVA. I've been here since 2016, and before that, I was a journalist with several different media outlets in town.
I'm Gilbert Gurgel. I'm the Outreach and Engagement Coordinator at PlanRVA and support Holly and the team.
Sid?
My name is Sid. I'm the digital media specialist here. I'm also a professional photographer for Richmond as well. And I've been in PlanRVA for 5 years.
Great. So I'm not a Robert's Rules person, but we've got a bunch of minutes that have been sort of gone out. Some of you have been here for part of them, all of them, or none of them. But I guess formally, we do need to approve the stack of minutes, don't we? And so if everybody is comfortable, even if you need to abstain for some or all, can we sort of give a little bit of relief and just ask for a motion to approve them all? Am I breaking any rules by doing that?
No, I think that can be done in
Can I get a
batch.
motion to approve the meeting minutes that are outstanding from August, November, January, and March?
I move we approve all the outstanding meeting minutes, regardless of whether you would normally abstain due to not being here.
I
Second.
that.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Now I get to turn it over to our favorite part, the agenda, to our professionals.
So last time, and I wanted to just sort of echo a couple things that Tim said. This committee is not that, hasn't been around that long either. So we started it in 2019, 2020, as part of a next step of our strategic planning effort. Tim volunteered to chair that committee in 2019. And really the focus of that was in recognition of PlanRVA's 50th year. We were formed in 1969. And I loved the theme that you had set for that committee of we've seen what we've been able to do in the last 50 years. Now what do we want to do in the next 50 years for the region? And so part of the discovery process with the strategic planning effort made it really aware that our engagement with our 9-member localities needed to be improved. And so, as Tim said, the stakeholder universe for public engagement and outreach, especially for this committee, is pretty large. The committee name connotes public outreach, and so obviously that's there, but we've I think over the last couple of years have really tuned into the fact that one of our greatest opportunities to reach the public at large is to leverage the outreach efforts of our local governments, our member local governments. And so our staff does a number of different things to try to do that, to kind of harness that energy. We coordinate regularly and communicate regularly with our region's public information officers and PIOs, the teams of staff members at different departments in the jurisdictions to be able to think about how to get the word out. And so through those partnerships, I think we've really been able to gain more traction. And while we have a wonderful public engagement team, they are small. And so the reality of trying to meet what's now like 1.3 million people in the community is a difficult charge. And I think we continue to walk this balance beam of recognizing that we're not an organization that has a marketing budget and sort of necessarily an outreach target that we're going to become a household name in the residents of the 9 localities in the region. But at the same time, as we kick off important initiatives like the long-range transportation plan or our climate pollution reduction project, public engagement is so important to those planning efforts. And hosting public meetings and being able to get the input of your constituents is really critical to that process. And so there's this dance that we do, right, of trying to figure out how do we make people feel like it's worth their while to spend time and energy and effort to participate in a public meeting or fill out a survey or give their input. But at the same time, we don't have name recognition like Midas of Richmond or something like that. So anyway, I just wanted to sort of name that, and this committee has been really valuable to us as staff in advising us on strategies that we could employ, particularly more effective and efficient ways to be able to reach the general public. So that's really, I think, a big part of why this group is here. One, to be able to make sure that you're keeping us accountable to the outreach that we need to do to our member jurisdictions, but then two, really thinking about, and Holly's gonna lead us in an exercise today that we did with our Community Transportation Advisory Committee a couple meetings back that was very effective, that just will hopefully help get you all thinking a little bit about your networks and ways that we could potentially tap into those to be able to share opportunities for public input. So with that, we started last meeting just putting together kind of a brief report. So on page 12 of the packet, you'll see just kind of some highlights of activities that staff has been up to since your last meeting. We'll continue to update this report each time we meet, just so that you can get a little bit of a sense of what our public engagement activities are. Some of those things are going to be ongoing and kind of the perennial activities, digital engagement, our newsletter, social media. We consistently run activities outreach related to our adult trash Central Virginia outreach program, but then we also are going to start trying to collect the data and report to you on events and public presence, and then also just things that we're doing out of the region, just to be able to build that recognition in the planning community beyond the Richmond region. So happy to kind of answer questions there. I also wanted to just name that because we're still in the process of getting to know many of our new commission members, Barb and I, or Janice and I, have been meeting with new commissioners. So if anybody is interested in a one-on-one, we'd be happy to do that. We did do sort of the group orientation at the February commission meeting, but certainly have had the chance to meet with Chris and Cameron and Frank. I think in this room, we've all done one-on-one meetings, which hopefully have been helpful, and just, to be able to create a good welcoming space for you all to join us as new commissioners. So the last thing I'll say is just, I'm in that mode right now of talking with local government administrators about whether or not they'd like us to do any presentations this coming year to the local boards of supervisors. Those of you that are on planning commission, if you think that there's a time that it would fit in your planning commission agendas, please let us know. Barbara J. Cox on our staff does meet with the region's planning directors about once a quarter. And so, we're always kind of connected at the staff level, but if there's ever anything that you think your planning commission members or your planning commission meeting viewers would like to know about for regional planning, feel free to let us know that. And I'll just close this part of the outreach recap to just say, I don't normally do this, but a little bit of something that I'm kind of proud of. I had the pleasure of sitting in the audience last night at a dinner club meeting where Mayor Stoney, Chairman Holland, and Chairman Nelson from Chesterfield and Henrico sat on a panel together. And it was a facilitated, kind of moderated panel about the Richmond region and what the big issues are that lie ahead and how the communities individually and collectively are working to address those. And I didn't count, I really should have been tallying it, but the PlanRVA's name came up so many times, I almost thought I had to go out of the room because I couldn't believe it. But it was just really exciting to be able to hear our organization's name associated with the good work that's happening in the region. And, obviously those three gentlemen in particular are pretty heavily engaged in the work that happens in this room, whether it's CVTA or the TPO or the commission, but it was just really kind of encouraging. I was getting text messages during the meeting like, whoa, wow, and it was really very encouraging to hear that reinforcement that the work that our staff is doing and the work that the commissioners are doing is helpful. And my biggest takeaway from that meeting is that one of the things that we set out to really do and name as part of this commission's purpose is to serve as the regional convener. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a convening on subject matter that our staff members have expertise, but this room, I think, has really become a place that is appreciated and known as a place where you all as leaders in the region can come And staff doesn't even have to really be in the room. And I think that that's, a really beautiful thing that in this short amount of time since our strategic planning process and kind of our efforts to support regional cooperation have borne fruit.
Absolutely. Questions or comments? I love that report. That was awesome.
That's great. The only quick comment I'll make as, I guess, a little bit of a veteran to this committee at this point. When I was new to PlanRVA, I kept having these sort of, oh wow, I didn't realize they had this, or I didn't realize we did that. And I think I would just encourage the folks who are newer to the organization overall, that your own journey of sort of what resources are here or what is insightful may end up being fodder for things that we as a committee should be trying to amplify to our audiences, right? Because as a planning commissioner and a citizen, there's a lot of cool stuff here, and I feel good as a member of the Ashland community that Ashland's processes and future plans are in coordination with the region and are taking advantage of knowledge that is here. In some cases, tapping into funding or at least joining up to do that. And those are strengths that come from this organization, and the more we can then amplify those, that's the way I look at sort of what we're supposed to be doing here in engagement wise. So.
Well said. Any other comments or questions? Martha, you said one more thing?
Yes, I apologize. I did want to just name one other thing to report to this group, and I don't know if we'll have time in the program at the joint annual meeting. So Tim and Jessica and I were all in attendance at the Chamber RVA's intercity visit in Atlanta at the end of April, beginning of May. And I wanted to just share with you all, to my knowledge, this is the first year that all 9 jurisdictions of the Richmond region were in attendance. So we were able to have Mayor Trivett from Ashland, and then we had the 4 county administrators from Goochland, Powhatan, New Kent, and Charles City, as well as the administrators from Chesterfield and Henrico and Hanover, and then elected officials from several of the communities as well. But I was just really proud that that happened, and they took a picture together, the administrators did, and I think it was posted on social media, and it was just really a great opportunity, and the feedback that I got from the administrators who haven't had the opportunity to go on the trip before, and also the mayor, it was just really great to hear the feedback that they appreciated the opportunity to go, and I think hopefully they will see the value in each of the smaller jurisdictions' representation on those trips in the future. So just another kind of opportunity for that connection and network building and kind of just synergy across the localities, I think is really important.
And I'll share with one perspective when we sort of think about our sort of role in this committee is, a lot of even the rebranding of the organization from RRPDC, which probably wouldn't have rolled off Tyrone's tongue as much as PlanRVA did, was part of the whole idea about really building a brand. And I was reminded that the brand of an organization is more about what other people say about the organization than it is what Martha says about the organization herself. So trying to tell people about what you're doing, sort of is tedious, but that's actually where I think this committee can help. We're boasting about what staff is doing, and we're telling an outward story to the community that doesn't understand what's going on. I know that's a lot easier for us to do than it is for Martha to boast on behalf of herself and her staff. So keep that in mind. It's sort of the brand is much more about what other people say about this organization than what it is that we say about it, and how can we effectively make sure that the brand is accurate. That's what we really want people to know. Go ahead, Jess, please.
No, as a new person to all of this, and I fully immersed myself at first, and I just want, and again, I'm not trying to name you out there, Martha, but Martha has been very, very open, receptive, helpful, navigating all these things. I see her at all the different events, and she's always, checking in, introduced me to people. And so I look at PlanRVA as like the glue that keeps the region together, kind of. That's how I've come to, I just think that it's a great way of we might have squabbles between each other, but this is a neutral space and we can, come together and work on things that are for everybody and that helps the whole region, so.
Should put that in a bottle and sell it on the street corners, so.
I'm gonna call you when we get
Yeah,
money
so-
for our video.
One of the things I was interested in is how, as a member of this committee, how do we fit in at local government? This is new to me, but I've been giving a report at our planning commission meetings and of course encourage them to come to plan day. But beyond that, what are some of the things that those of you who've been here for a while are actually doing?
That's great.
I think it's a great question for us to continually ask, because we're each gonna personalize what the committee's doing and then feel comfortable amplifying 2 or 3 things. We're not gonna all feel comfortable amplifying everything. So yeah, listen for those 2 or 3 things that, sort of speak to you, I think would be my suggestion, so.
I think like with the climate survey that we had, I think that once if it can be made available sooner than later, I got it later in the thing, but I mean, just being able to push it out on social medias, I think that I know a lot and engaged a lot of people within that last week that I was able to push it out. And I know not everybody's a social person, but I definitely am on socials a lot. And so anything that I can do to push people to fill out surveys to help the region and trying to get more input, I think is an awesome idea. Also, if anybody is active on socials. So if you have those, get them to us sooner than later and then we can, help with pushing out.
We'll move into Holly, you're next.
Before I do that, do we have a preferred channel to communicate to the committees? Are we primarily doing that through email? Like if something like that comes up, is it just, it comes via our main email?
Yes, one of the things I was just thinking is if you're interested, I think we could, 2 things. Many of you heard an update from Sid and Janice a couple of meetings ago about launching a SharePoint site for board members. The multi-factor authentication that is the best practice for accessing, a shared resource site like that is problematic, we believe, for many of you because of I'm looking at you, which you're like, no, it's not a big deal. But we have some concerns that it will become an unused site if you have to go through the number of steps that are appropriate to go through. And so, because none of the material that we were gonna put on this SharePoint site is, protected or not subject to FOIA or not public information already, we are creating a dedicated space on our open website that's just more geared toward, so it's the same content that's there now, but it's gonna be organized in a way that's more kind of like a board page, or set of pages, I should say. I'm saying that because I'm thinking as you were talking that one thing we could do is put a little bit more information out when that is up and running, more like a social kit, as opposed to just expecting all of you to share what you happen to see in your feed, which, isn't necessarily that formulaic. So that could be something, Holly, that we could think about is pushing out to this committee maybe in particular, that if you do leverage your social media, you don't have to wait to just notice it on our feed and push it. You could actually proactively have it to do what you wanna do with it.
Yes.
It would be easier if it was in one place, like a site versus having to send an email every time.
Yes.
Plus, if your inboxes look anything like mine, it gets a little bit hard to go find that again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we could do something like that, I think, that could potentially arm those of you that wanna do it,
Yes.
with the content.
I continue to find PlanRVA stuff in my trash.
Oh.
Garbage also, which irritates me. So I keep moving it out, but I don't know what's going on with that, but
Have to sit down.
yeah.
Okay. Great.
It's not you, just as I say, I think because I'm a new member, it's gonna take a while for their protocols to catch up with my patterns of who I get stuff from, so I don't know, is that possible?
Maybe your predecessor kept hitting spam when they just.
Okay, well.
Could you talk briefly about Social Pinpoint?
We are going to.
Okay.
Is it, where do you see it? Oh, in the
I would,
in the
last
Yes,
time's
it's,
minutes.
it's in my notes for item 6.
Great, thank you.
Great, okay. So, this next section, we're gonna do an activity which actually came from CTAC, so the Community Transportation Advisory Committee Council. Why can I never remember what the C is? Is it committee? Committee. So they got a new decree, new job duties, if you will, last year to be a more active participant in the TPO, in the transportation side of PlanRVA, to be essentially the public outreach committee and to help us spread the word. And so what we're doing is trying to figure out how to both engage them and give them the tools a little bit better to be the great representatives that they already are out in their communities, very similar to this committee. And one of the things that they asked of us was, hey, I don't know that I necessarily know where all the places are in my region. Because some of the questions we were asking is, where do people gather? Where are the places where people are already going? Where are the groups that are there? Who are some of the kind of underserved populations that might not always get reached in your different regions? And so what they asked of us was, well, we're not sure that we know how to identify that, or we would like some more information about how to do that. So Chair Erickson from the city of Richmond of that committee and I put together this essentially activity, which is who's in my community. And we did this at 2 CTAC meetings ago in person, and we'll just take essentially 20 minutes today to do the same activity. I'm gonna break you up into small pairs in a minute, but to start to outline and identify. And what was great about it is that even some folks who'd been with us a long time, John Leonard, who's our VCU rep, he was like, I went into this activity thinking, oh, I already know all the places. And then he said, actually, it turned out having the opportunity to actually write it down and think about it, I uncovered some more places I wasn't thinking about. So that was really helpful. And so the CTAC group liked it so much that Martha said, hey, can you bring this to this committee and let's test it here? Because what I think it's helpful to do is just get out of your brain all the places so that you can help us start to think about every time we do have an actual ask or something we really want the community input on, we already know where the places are to go. Now, to also Martha's point, physically we may not be able to go to visit every single church group, community meeting, synagogue, any of these things that are happening, but you all are already connected to them, right? So I think especially human connections matter, right? So whoever Cameron knows in the city of Richmond, whoever Frank knows in Chesterfield, you're already in those places, and so you're helping us get that word out. And so we will absolutely put a media toolkit and get some talking points and some images when we have specific things. But a lot of the things we talked about in CTAC were, well, what do we talk about when there isn't anything to act on? Because we still want people to know about the good work we're doing. Like Brent said, there's a lot of things that we're doing here that people don't know about, and you just figure out what that thing is that you're excited about and you talk to your people about it, right? That's that simple. But I think having a little bit of structure around where are the people gathering, who are we forgetting to talk to is helpful. So what I'm gonna do in a minute is break you all into pairs. So you're welcome to get up and move around the room if that makes you feel better. Go sit by the window and get some sun. And I'm gonna give everybody an individual packet, which is essentially just starting to give you some groups of places where people gather. So there's a page about media. Hey, what are the media channels in your region? Now, obviously we know about the RTD and like the TV stations, so you don't need to tell us that. But if there's like a hyper-local blog or a neighborhood newsletter that's really active, or your next door group in your particular district is very active, we want to know about that. We also ask about kind of community centers. So like, where are the small gathering places? Where are the coffee shops where people meet? Where are the large gathering spaces that always host events of like 50 to 150? Where are the places of worship that are very publicly active and or have opportunities to kind of bring the public together outside of maybe just their congregation? What are the neighborhood associations? What are some of the nonprofits or community groups that serve underserved populations, to think about inclusivity, thinking about access to folks who of all abilities and ages and races and gender presentations, all of that. So we want to hear all that. So I'm going to give you guys about 20 minutes to kind of work out on your own. So I'm going to ask you to work with a partner, but answer it for your own locality. Working with somebody else gets the juices flowing, and sometimes you'll think of something and then they'll be like, oh, I didn't think of that. So that's why I want you to pair up. And then we're gonna come back together and just do a quick share. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna digitize this, because we actually had somebody in CTAC actually help us get it virtual and got it into a spreadsheet so that it is searchable and we can use it. So that, now that requires a little bit of maintenance. So I also want you to think about, hey, I like spreadsheets. I like order. How can I help PlanRVA keep this up to date and functioning, right? So I don't want to create data that isn't useful, but at the very least, it's helpful for you to get out of your head and into paper where all the places we're already touching, and find some new places. Questions about the assignment? Okay, I'll pass this out, take one. This way, over here. And then find yourself a partner. great one.
Thank you.
Find yourself a partner and then come back. What time is it now? I don't have a clock.
Yeah.
9:30.
Larry, give me 1 minute, I'm gonna
Come back at 9:50. We say 9:45. 9:45. Come back at 9:45. And then we'll share. Go.
Three of us? Yes.
Yeah, it's like if you don't have a partner, you can be a trio, but I think there's enough of us to partner up.
Oh, well, that's good.
Do you want one of these? You're gonna do what?
Well met.
Sorry I didn't have time to say hi last night.
We were in and out, we stayed for like.
Oh, yeah.
My girlfriend kind of duped her into being there, she didn't know it was gonna be a whole presentation on bridges, so she gets there, I'm like,
Yeah.
there's pop
share one thing that you think is like the most awesome thing you wrote down. What is the best place to go, or the aha moment that you had?
Anxious to Hanover. What is
Hey, what's going on in Hanover, Larry?
Tim's volunteering his group to go first.
I'm gonna volunteer later.
All right, repeat that question.
What's the best thing that you identified in your group? You're like, oh yeah, that's a good place to go talk to.
We have several locations where a lot of people have events and all. One of them is the Hanover Vegetable Farm.
You know, I heard a radio ad about that this morning, and I was like, I don't know what the Hanover Vegetable Farm is, and I felt left out, so.
That's getting larger and larger. They have concerts there
Yeah.
all summer long, and it's, a lot of people come there. And
Okay.
right around the corner from that is another place called Gilman Farm. And they do the same thing. They have auctions and
Yeah, they got rained
it brings in people from everywhere. So
Excellent, okay,
those two are good places.
I like it, thank you. Any other group wanna tell us something aha or amazing they identified?
I was just gonna note that, in West End, Henrico, especially, there's this strong South Asian population, and so both the Hindu Center for Virginia and the West End Islamic Center, are really critical centers, to get access to a lot of people.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Yep, so I cheated and broke the rules, I apologize, but I did use Claude and Perplexity AIs, and what I was happy to see was that on the civic or commercial associations, the top three, Chesterfield Chamber of Commerce, the Chesterfield Business Council, and the Midlothian Business Alliance, are three of my favorite organizations in Chesterfield. And there's a whole bunch more on here, but it was in line with, I've been on the MBA board for over a decade, so there's a lot of good stuff in here. I'll send it to you in spreadsheet.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, using technology to our advantage, I love that. Yeah, anybody else have any major ahas they must share?
I think New Kent, our Chamber of Commerce, really does a lot of events throughout, and a lot of them are at the winery or in public spaces like on the school property and things like that.
Okay, excellent, thank
You have
you.
a horse racing track too.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now pass your sheets
None of
here.
the rest of us have a horse racing.
So give us your sheets and we're gonna figure out a way to digitize this and get it back to you. The very simple form, it might just be literally, we're gonna scan it and send it to you, so you have your own copy. And this does not mean that if you think of anything after today, you can't share it again, right? So ideally, we're gonna get this in a form that we can keep updating.
Well,
All right,
and
no,
at least in
yeah.
my case, getting the digital copy back will prompt me to
Yeah.
go get like
Yeah.
the official name of the thing that I wrote down.
Yeah.
I can't remember the
Yeah.
official name or who it contacted is.
And
all that,
this
which will help you.
exercise is just as much for you as it is for us, right? Like I'm not, again, I can collect the info, what I really want us to think about is like, who do we know? And so that you have that knowledge just as much as we have it, so, thank you.
Thank you, good, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks, Holly.
Well done, Holly.
Thanks.
Here's a spare.
Oh, that's great.
Work program?
Yes, so at our last meeting, I did a lot of talking and blew through a lot of information, and one of the to-dos from that meeting was to try to push out a more concise summary, which was included in your packet for this meeting in the PowerPoint deck. So I won't go through it other than to hit a couple of the highlights. My goal was to try to give you a little bit of background. So when Neil Spoonhour was our chair a few years ago, he encouraged me to really try to boil down the work to like, I think he made up a number, but 5 key imperatives is what we ended up with. And so this idea that, you know, when I'm communicating with the board in a formal way about, you know, are we hitting our targets, it's not compared to this work program that has a gazillion projects and things like that in it, but really kind of, you know, at the end of the day, what is the board measuring against? And so I put that slide in there for the 2024 key imperatives, which the board adopted, and then that's what's used to create that feedback from a personnel performance evaluation perspective, but also just to kind of keep me focused on the big picture of where the organization is headed. In addition to that, in this last fiscal year, some of you may recall that there's been a lot of emphasis from the board in making sure that we're meeting the expectations of our member jurisdictions, the initiative that we launched last year around local technical assistance, making sure that from a personnel perspective, we're investing in our employees appropriately. That was a significant priority of the board headed into the current fiscal year. And then obviously, you know, continuing to meet the requirements that this organization has from the General Assembly and the Virginia Code. So in thinking about the proposed imperatives for this coming year, on that next slide, proposed FY 2025 imperatives, our staff has been working as a leadership team to identify what our recommendations for that would be this year. And the 5 that are listed there are really being focused on preparing our regional strategic plan. This is a requirement in Virginia Code. We have to submit to DHCD, not in Cameron's department, thankfully, but we have to submit each year on our progress in preparing and implementing that regional strategic plan. Our historic way of doing that has been to report on, well, this year we updated the long-range transportation plan. Last year we did the hazard mitigation. It's been about kind of the subject, the specific planning efforts that we've undertaken. And in this current fiscal year, our staff has taken, I think, a really big strides forward to be able to make a commitment internally. And then therefore, our goal is to make that commitment externally, that our regional strategic plan is the compilation of those subject matter specific plans. But what our pivot, if you will, is to really make sure that those plans actually talk to and support one another. So what we're saying are the priorities in transportation align with the priorities in economic development and hazard mitigation and green infrastructure and affordable housing, so that, you know, the plans for the region literally work together and align with the goals of the jurisdictions. So we've dedicated a portion of the program for the joint annual meeting to have the bodies, the commission, the TPO, and the CBTA spend some time looking at some priority statements and really be able to flesh those out so that we can start to have a set of guiding principles that will serve as the basis of that regional strategic plan, and then we will use those for our subject matter specific planning efforts going forward. You heard me talk a little bit earlier about this identity that we've assumed or have leaned into as far as regional convener. And so again, I think we want to continue that, whether that is most recently, we've started convening the locality clerks and legislative liaisons. It's been really exciting. Janice just hosted that 2 weeks ago, and it was great to be able to see the connections of people in the room that we've never met in person, we've only emailed with, but also they had never met in person, like, oh, a face with a name, a face with an email address. And so that was really wonderful to be able to see those connections, to be able to create that space for those folks to have a support network, ask questions of each other, you know, that kind of a thing. And so I think that is something that we've gotten great feedback on. That group is convened twice, and we'll continue to do that on a periodic basis. We do that for other types of staff positions across the jurisdictions, and we'll continue to do that. But then also, I think on topics that this committee or this board identify, where if we need to hold the space for a topic that's important, again, doesn't necessarily need to be something that is attached to deploying staff, but we can make the space available to be able to host the important conversations that need to happen in the region. You also have heard me talk about already and allude to the commitment to local tech. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Have we thought about bringing up the regional homelessness situation? Or is that still too inflammatory right now? I'm just asking.
You
I
tell
think it
me.
would be an awesome way of getting all the members in the same room and have the conversation openly. And maybe find better solutions or more solutions, or that maybe there's, you know, multiple things that we could be doing. I don't know.
Sure.
That's just.
I think lots of different ways we could handle that. I mean, one thing might be to start to just be able to bring Homeward and to talk about the regional continuum of care and what that system looks like and how it functions and where they see, you know, need for support. That's one idea. Yeah.
We can talk. I'm just.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to.
No, it's.
Interfere.
I think, yes, I mean, I think the short answer is yes. I'm always careful to make sure that we preserve that safe space that you talked about earlier, but at the same time, I think that there does appear to be a growing appetite to want to be able to leverage this convening to bring useful information to the table, even if the decisions are made back at home.
Yeah.
To just be able to have a place where everybody could get access to that information and then make make the decisions, how the decisions will be made back at your local boards, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I just think that sometimes things are decided in one locality and everybody's supposed, so I just think that that's like, let's all get together and sit and talk about it instead of, just making decisions for others and expecting them to come along or I don't know.
Yeah, I'll
More
also be-
information is better in my mind.
Absolutely.
And communication is pertinent for getting those things made.
I'll also be meeting with the 9 administrators Goochland is hosting in June, and so we could talk about, kind of looking ahead for the next, 2 quarters. What are those topics that
Yeah, I mean,
they're
and-
talking about, and then how could we?
And that's a perfect example. I mean,
Absolutely.
you don't think about them as having homelessness, but they have been serving some of our people that don't have health because they have a health center out there. So I mean, I just think that there's so many things where we can work
Sure.
together and collaborate and be better on servicing the folks that need the most help in our communities, so.
I agree with that because, and you can't be in a relatively small community, but a fast-growing community, people there think that there's no homelessness.
Yeah.
And there really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to talk with you more
Thank you.
about that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of precisely, I think,
Yeah.
what we're talking about, how to explore what the right way is to make that, make those conversations possible. Local technical assistance is almost sort of the other side of that coin, really thinking about if there's a specific need in one of our jurisdictions, how can we support that? Examples in this upcoming work program, I think that are happening in multiple jurisdictions, but certainly we're always available to participate in the updates of your local comprehensive plans. We've done work with Ashland before on, the Parks and Recreation Plan and the Bike and Pedestrian Plan, things like that. But also thinking about, through the TPO and the Adopted Work Program for this year, we're working with the 4 smaller jurisdictions and GRTC to really look at what a more connected transportation, public transit network can look like. So you've seen a lot of the really exciting media coverage about the launch of the microtransit in many of our communities, the integration with Bay Transit, really what does that start to look like? So those are examples of where I think we've got some really great opportunities. We're doing some grant writing in partnership with Chesterfield County right now. So there's just some, I think, new opportunities to really think about what supports can our staff provide to your local staff. That has the opportunity to look very different in each of the 9 localities. The other thing that we have happening right now is we did release an RFP for on-call professional, non-professional, I'm blanking, planning and engineering services. And so that will be a bench of consultants that are available to our member jurisdictions as well as the commission. In other words, through cooperative procurement, a public body can secure a consultant, they can execute an agreement with a consultant. And then if the town of Ashland has a need that one of our on-call bench members has the capacity to meet, the town could directly contract with that consultant through having already effectively achieved the procurement requirements. I'm saying all that.
Yeah, it's actually pretty powerful. There's certain
There are projects.
reciprocity things that jurisdictions can already do, but this sort of really makes it a clean sweep of all of the services that PlanRVA procures competitively. Every one of the 9 jurisdictions can actually tap into.
And we know with the infrastructure bill, there are lots of grant opportunities that will be dropping, in the months coming forward. And oftentimes there's this requirement of sort of shovel ready, and the grant deadline doesn't necessarily allow you to go through the procurement process to hire that consultant to do the 30% design, but this will enable that almost like a fast track process that's compliant and has a process that's been vetted to secure those consultants and whatnot. So we're excited about that, and it'll hopefully be a nice service to offer. Yes.
Localities can also buy off state contract if that
Yes.
exists too, right?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, that just might be another additional sort of like service to be able to provide
To
and make sure
promote.
localities
Yeah.
are aware of that. I think the state is going through a number of similar, RFPs and stuff to get folks signed up.
Yes, true, yeah. Our regional data center and hub, we are continuing to work to expand that. You'll hear more about this if you're able to attend PlanRVA Day on June 13th, or have a session dedicated to data-informed decision-making. But We, along with PlanRVA, the Community Foundation, and the United Way, have been participating in a technical assistance project with the Urban Institute to develop a set of mobility metrics that are tied to evidence-based research. So if you pull this lever, I'll give an example. The research says from a decade of studying communities across the country, children who have access to the internet, so affordable, accessible, high-speed internet, and the equipment to be able to operate have better educational outcomes than those who do not. And so an example of an activity that, or initiative that is percolating here in the Richmond region is a program, PCs for People, that will create a mechanism for our corporate partners in the community to donate their 5-year-old life cycle computer equipment that they might otherwise be recycling or landfilling to this organization. They'll wipe, refurbish, put together to be able to then distribute through community-based organizations to families or children that are identified in need. They'll provide the training and the online technical support and ongoing tech support for that equipment so that in this example, kids in the community would be able to have access to this computer equipment that otherwise they might not be able to afford. So that's a kind of an example of where we could tie an initiative to metrics that we know have demonstrated that action means better opportunity for kids, if that makes sense. So we're working on building out that set of metrics as part of the equitable mobility framework, and really has been very exciting to form this partnership with these other anchor organizations. So PlanRVA will be that data center hub in partnership with the other organizations so that we can leverage and be speaking from, I'll say, the same sheet of music when we're talking about data. We're also, as part of that, exploring some of the issues in Henrico. Chris, I know you've probably been attached to this, you all have seen in the media, the published growth rate from census for the communities is largely inaccurate in many of our communities. We had a lot of challenges with the methodology for census data for 2020, and it's a concern. I think we all can agree that the published figures for Henrico County are impossibly inaccurate. So we are working with our partners at the localities as well as University of Richmond and VCU to try to figure out how we can mitigate the reality that the census data that are mandated in many cases to be our primary source of data, but we know it's not accurate. So working through some issues like that.
Is it
Oh, no, it's just, the Henrico numbers are just so
low?
far out of what's reasonable that it's obvious, but I think it underscores the point that there's unreliability across the board.
That makes me even more worried about the growth in Chesterfield that is already over.
Yeah, it could go either way, yeah.
Top in the state right now.
If we could just call it the regional data hub, the phrase data center gives me the willies right now.
Good point, thank you, that's really helpful,
I had the exact same thought.
Thank
Same
you.
sense.
thank you.
That's another issue.
This is exactly, thank you, that's good testing. And then, of course, our fifth
That
bullet.
is another topic, by the way, like, with homelessness that, we chat with my board members, but, data centers are a regional issue, and one county shouldn't be, trying to address it alone, and there are a number of, impacts that spread out throughout jurisdictions, when we're talking about the, massive amount of infrastructure that's coming, and the potential for, in other industrial terms, talking about leakage, right, from one community to another. And I know that being able to have a joint approach to data centers across Central Virginia would be something I think that would be beneficial.
Written it down, yeah, thank you.
And for us, it's affordable housing, workforce housing is major.
Attainable is my word I usually like to use. I don't know, I think that's.
I heard the word essential housing too at some point too, which is
Essential workers.
another way to look at it, and sort of through the economic development lenses.
Yes.
We can't keep bringing business in if we don't have essential. I like the way that sounded too.
Oh, exactly. Lego may be bringing 1,761 people, but where are they gonna live? So that's, it's just, you know, should that be part of our EDA's, you know, plans, you know, before, do we have the place for them, et cetera, so.
Yeah, I do know your staff is thinking about that quite a bit.
Yeah. This is great, because these are the topics that sit in my mind underneath of these 5 imperatives. Are there things that you feel like I'm missing, or that we're missing in what our priorities need to be for the coming year? I mean, these are the top line things, there's the work that sits under them, but from a headline perspective, I guess, are there things that you think we're missing the boat on, or not giving focus to?
I know your staff is working on a lot of environmental and climate things, but I think, you know, there needs to be, in my opinion, more focus. We're running out of time for climate situations. It's just getting worse, so that's just one of my priorities personally. I don't know if a lot of people follow that, but.
I don't think there's anything, I agree that climate's a big concern from a very high level imperatives. It doesn't feel like anything's missing. It does feel like being clear in the distinction as we're just presenting this even to the board between what we mean by technical assistance and what we mean by data help, because the technical and data just, it sounds a little like they're the same thing. When you articulate, it's very clear. One is like partner with localities and help them get stuff done because we can bring expertise. And the other is make sure localities are aware of all this data that they can use in their own processes. But they don't sound that different, at least when you read them on the page.
Okay.
Wait till the explanation.
I agree with that, yeah.
The other, I've got the floor, there may be a way, again, in sort of presenting this and to your point about trying to make sure all the pieces integrate with the strategic plan. If there were sort of 5 action phrases or verbs that sort of set these up, so like, you know, coordinate, and that's the regional plan, and then support, and that's the technical assistance, or something like that. I think it's easy for this stuff to sound bureaucratic and, you know, technical, and really there's a lot of power in how you're organizing what the work should be.
I will agree. I would have never thought when it said technical assistance, all the stuff that you explained that is part of that, you know, with the grant writing and all that, I wouldn't have thought that would fall under technical. And so that's, I think that, I'm not sure what we would call that, but, it's like a support, it's definitely a large support kind of system is what it is, but I don't know. Excuse me?
So we're in this like iterative evolutionary process. So on that, can I test some language with you? Okay. Advance our regional strategic plan.
That makes me think that it's already been
Created.
created.
Yeah.
Develop,
Yeah, I think it's more of like,
prepare.
not advance. I think either develop or prepare is probably better than.
And this is gonna be totally unhelpful feedback, because I don't know what the word is. If there was a word that says what prepare says, but also has that, like,
That knitting.
bring
kind
it
of that-
together,
yeah.
make sure that it is maximally impactful because all the pieces fit. Because when you talked about it, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds really important. We should-
Coalesce.
the different
Coalesce
pieces.
is a good
Coalesce,
word.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, I like you just said maximize impact, although that sounds a little jargony, but maximize is
Turns out I don't know how to spell coalesce, but I'll figure that out.
See in there somewhere.
Near the end, I think. Beginning.
This is not the right word, but, because I've been struggling with this as well. Be the regional convener, regions convener, be the regions convener.
It's action.
Serve member jurisdictions through local technical assistance.
I think the technical is part of it because I don't, it's more than just technical. It's like, you know, with,
I don't know, it's a term of art though.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think it's it's one of those things that like people who provide technical assistance know what
Know what
technical
it
assistance
means,
is, but
yeah.
nobody else does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so there might actually be just like a totally different set of words other than
Yeah.
technical assistance. Okay. Helpful, thank you. Position PlanRVA as the regional data hub. I took center out.
Appreciate that.
Position doesn't really get at the action that you're doing with the data, it just says we would like to be that, but doesn't tell me what we're doing with it. Like, what are we doing with the data? Are we creating it? Are we giving it? Are we exporting it?
I serve as the regional data hub, I think is better maybe, but I don't know. I mean, cause that's what you're doing. You are the,
Serving the data
Yeah.
to someone, yeah.
well, you're kind of, or
Yeah.
hosting,
We're
or
also
hosting it, maybe that, I
Collecting
don't know.
it and
Cleaning it.
Disseminating
yeah,
it.
right, you're like collating it.
Come on, Mr. Technical Man over here.
I like serving, because that's implies we're giving it to someone.
Aggregating, there you go, there's one.
We're also analyzing it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
right? Maybe we need 5 words for each.
yeah, we need a sentence, we need a sentence for each.
Well, I mean, these are headings, I mean, to
Yeah.
your point, so I think what we're trying to do is create something that the heading gives you an inkling of what this actually is, to your point, and then there's a narrative underneath of it that sort of explains in more detail, but this is too ambiguous, what you have in the slide, and so, ensure compliance and agency sustainability.
Short word there, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
We can work the word catalyze in here somewhere, that's a good one.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
The other thing, because I know we're over time, that I want to just be able to seed for you, because I'm hopeful that each of you will be able to attend the joint annual meeting on the 13th. We have put together, I think, an exciting agenda. It's a bit different than what we've done the last couple of years. I think that's a good thing, sort of based on the energy of today's conversation. Some of you know John Thomas with the SideSmart. He's done some local government board retreat facilitation and things like that. Has been in the regional planning world. Yeah, I think he did Chesterfield's recently. Been in the regional planning world at the earlier part of his career in other communities, but has been in the Charlottesville, Richmond, Central Virginia kind of region for a while now. He's partners with Bill Leidy and Blaine Ramsey and Bob Holsworth in their kind of think tank support organization that's based here in Richmond. And he's gonna be facilitating sort of a work session, taking advantage of the fact that we'll have membership from the CBTA, the TPO, and the PDC all in the same room, to really be able to provide more guidance to us in the formation of this coalescence of the regional strategic plan. So our staff have reviewed the 9 local governments' comprehensive plans, the master plan for Chesterfield, any other document that we could kind of get our hands on that felt like it was comprehensive, holistic in its focus. And we've come up with 6 key phrases that we want to test with the group and then be able to put a little additional language behind them. So first step of this is to say, did we read what you wrote correctly? And they may not necessarily all fit one-to-one for each of the 9 communities, but on the whole, does this sort of capture, I'll say, the vibe of what the collection of the local government's plans are for the region? So they are strategic and resilient, in no particular order, just to be clear. A strategic and resilient infrastructure, economic vitality, quality and diverse housing options, safe and healthy community, environmental stewardship, and equitable opportunity and choice. Yeah, they're on that last slide of, and so the idea would be that, through kind of a workshop style, just, not a ton of time in the annual meeting agenda, but a block of time, we would create an opportunity for. One of the things that our staff realized is that, interestingly enough, as commissioners, when we prepare these planning efforts, you see it at the end. You oftentimes don't participate in sort of setting the vision, for what we're trying to achieve. And so we go through the planning process, the planning cycle, where we say, well, this is what the data say. this is what the public said, these are the recommendations, now board, you have to wrestle with whether or not you think that this is a good plan or not. And so we're trying to flip that a little bit and get the leadership of the region to give us some high-level direction. And then this would essentially become the guiding principles of our knitting to the coalescence of these regional strategic plans, and would become, as applicable and appropriate, those would become, the foundational principles of how we approach our various topical planning efforts. So that's the goal, as part of that. And so part one, again, is to validate that, did we interpret the collection of the local plans correctly? Can everyone sort of live with these 6 things? Are they generalized enough that everybody can see something in it for them, but also specific enough that they're useful? And so then the second part of that is, how do we start to really define, so that when we say economic vitality, we have a general acceptance and understanding of what that term means for the Richmond region. And that might look a little bit differently in each of the communities, but for purposes of the regional planning effort, we understand what it is that we're talking about. So this is a thinker.
No,
So we're trying to prep many of you heading into that meeting so that, it feels like that can be a productive time for that session. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Brent.
Well, it seems pretty comprehensive, and as I think through the process that Ashland just recently finished with our comprehensive plan and all the time we spent on different topics, they all fall in here. The one that my sort of gut reaction was to question a little what was intended as the safe and healthy community. Just because what came to my mind was around like, oh, we have a crime problem or a safety problem or some major issues that where we're not a safe and healthy enough community, and is that a priority? So, but Ashland is only one of many localities. I don't know what's really under that bucket, or if other people were like, oh yeah, that was big for us, was our citizens don't feel safe or something. But maybe just about the wording and what was in that.
Yeah, that's helpful to hear. For us, it's from an emergency preparedness perspective.
Okay.
So as we think about how to make sure that our communities are prepared.
Yeah, it's completely different than what I'm thinking of,
From a prevention or, one of our focus areas in emergency preparedness is anti-terrorism. So there is a bona fide safety element there.
Okay.
But also, kind of thinking about it from a preparedness of, how do we prepare for power outages related to hurricane season, or how do we make sure that in that example, that our folks that are reliant on equipment in their home, Dominion has a registration system that says if you've got, an AED machine or an oxygen machine, their first priority one to be able to restore power, those types of things. That, in the context of PlanRVA's world, we think about it from an emergency preparedness and, kind of not so much in crime, local crime, or
And only
those
because
kinds of
emergency
issues.
prepared, as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, yeah. But
Yeah.
somehow that wasn't what these words prompted for me. But saying like resiliency, we sort of use that word, and maybe this is right. I just wanted to share the reaction and start the discussion.
Yeah, when I saw safe and healthy, I was thinking of the fact that we need more medical opportunities and availability, and the lack of hospital infrastructure and wait times, and like emergency fire and and police availability, except because of growth, et cetera, and the need to keep up with that to meet the needs of our communities. That's where I was at with that, but.
I was someplace really different too, because I was thinking about people not getting run over by cars.
Oh, well, that's definitely an option
Which is
also,
a,
yes.
which is a
That
problem.
is too, yes.
Pedestrian incidents is a problem in practice. So like, maybe the word preparedness is, because some of these things are in resilient infrastructure, right? And other places.
Yes.
So Martha, if the objective is to really get at that emergency preparedness piece, then maybe this should be a little bit more specific, so that everybody doesn't bring their own
baggage.
Right, right. Because I think that's a really important thing, and it's really important, not only because we have grant funds to do that work, but preparedness, I think, does, when you say that, I was like, oh, okay, well, I know exactly what that's about.
Yeah.
See, it does sort of remind me about, sort of back to the strategic plan, one of the healthy exercises we did is to make sure we knew what we were gonna say no to.
Yeah.
And so in this case here, I do think it's important to make sure that we don't try to boil the ocean with
Yeah.
this small talented staff
Yeah.
and ask them to take on things that it's impossible for them to do. So sort of having this aligned with the strategic plan, until the board directs this organization to go do things outside of their strategic plan, I think it's important that these words speak to what we're staffed to do, what we have subject matter expertise to do, what we all believe, as part of this organization. But yeah, the safe and healthy does connotate a whole bunch of other things.
It's like that metaphor where everybody only sees a little bit of the elephant,
Yeah.
and asked to figure out what it is, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's our elephant.
Well, and so the first thing I thought when I saw these is you can't help but not think of all the ways that you can't have one without the other, and how they all, again, we're back to connecting and coalescing and interact with each other, because the equitable opportunities and choices, for me, that also has a point of inclusiveness as well. And so the communities that are not, that we need to be very inclusive. And so I see a lot, again, on socials, the way communities separate via their racial groups, and how one says, well, we're not getting this, and the other one says, well, they're always getting that. And so, I think it's better about, thinking about how people perceive those things also. But again, these all connect in one way or another. Can't have, economic vitality if there aren't diverse housing opportunities, or, a healthy community, or they just, maybe that's a puzzle piece kind of situation, of where you put them all together and that's how they, I don't know. But
So
I'm sorry,
if
that
I
made it more
understand
difficult.
things correctly, this is sort of the exercise that you're gonna go through on Chamber RVA, or on
That's
PlanRVA.
and I mean, I'm relying on John to help create a more structured exercise than what I just sort of plopped
there.
into
This has been
today.
our joint meeting on the
Yes.
13th, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so we'll get a little sneak peek
yeah,
at the
Okay.
conversation
Yes.
that's gonna happen on that day.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Because it's different than what we typically ask you all to do in our meetings, and so we wanna prepare a critical mass to,
Well, I'm just reminded, so we're not deciding on
Yeah.
this today.
Yeah.
We're sort of providing input, but we're all gonna be asked to participate in a couple of weeks.
but this is helpful, because I mean, I can imagine we might, before the 13th, replace safe and healthy community with prepared and resilient community. To be more refined on what it is that we think we're talking about, and then to Tim's point, it's the board's prerogative to say, no, that's too narrow.
Yeah.
We need to
Correct.
broaden it,
Yeah.
Okay. But I think helping to, as you all said, when I see these words, this is what I think. And so I'm looking at it through the lens of how PlanRVA is functioning, and you all are hearing it, so that in and of itself is really valuable, so that we don't set off, I think what we're trying to avoid is setting off connotations that we didn't imagine.
Yes.
That
Right.
stall the conversation
Makes sense.
before we ever even get to.
Yeah.
Would it help if you put like 2 or 3 bullet points underneath each one of them to head the thought process and
Yeah, and
right
I
direction?
think our team has some actual citations that we can, so if somebody's like, where'd this come from? We can be like, well, it's here in 5 of your comp plans. We didn't, So kind of, so yes, I think
Call
we
you
can
out
do
on your own stuff, yeah, that's
some
right.
description, but also we can point back to, we've
source,
wordsmithed, but this didn't just manifest, this came from.
Hold them accountable, that's
Yeah.
right,
Research.
yes.
Cameron, did you have a
Or
point?
us, not them.
So if kind of hazard mitigation falls under safe and healthy communities, what are the buckets under equitable opportunity and choice?
Yeah.
Like, what's the work, you mean?
Yeah,
Sounds
like
Similar,
what
yes.
is, because those are great words, but like what does it mean?
What's the actual work in
Yeah.
each bucket, yeah.
That's, yep.
And I do see how that is all tied into infrastructure, housing, economic, like it's all there, but just like,
Okay,
Good point.
Yeah.
yeah.
Is that just, well, that's That's kind
I
of
mean,
what
again, I
thought
would say
about.
from, for our perspective, it's the roll-up of some of the others, because it's, choice, from a transportation mode perspective.
Yeah.
And that's what I would,
And
Yeah.
that's-
transportation.
Mobility jumps
Yeah.
out on that one.
But-
Okay.
Yeah, but I hear what you're saying, to sort of make sure that there's a set of sub-bullets, so to speak, that support each of these headings,
I think that would help.
yeah.
I mean, if you're
To
talking
push
about,
back a little bit, I
Sure.
think that was what our hope was, the product of the board discussion would
Okay.
be. So that it's not us defining these things, but it is actually the three boards saying, we're gonna say, these are the three things that sit under
So
that.
is equitable opportunity solely for transportation?
then it would be
I think
maybe
transportation
connectivity then.
facilitates equitable opportunity
Yeah.
as like a prime, like, right, it's an
Okay.
enabler.
Right, like the more opportunity you have to transportation, the more opportunity you have available to you.
Access
What about-
to efficient,
Right.
affordable.
Yeah, like equitable transportation or equitable connectivity or something
Yeah, I
like
mean,
that, where
I
it's-
guess I'll be blunt, I would say, I'm not imagining education vouchers
Okay.
as like a piece, so I mean, to your point, what is this and what is this not?
It's not,
Right.
And I mean, that's not the space that we
Are operating.
are operating
Yeah.
in,
Right.
yeah, so
And
I,
Martha, if these 6 things are to be part of a discussion and get refined, maybe it's fine to just tee it up as we took all this input
Right.
and we went to 10,000 feet. And part of the exercise is, are we too broad, are we too narrow, are the words conveying? And
thank
then
you,
let the
that's
group
a
work.
really good summary of
Right.
what,
Good,
better, a
'cause
better
'cause
summary of what,
what we're
yeah.
dealing with is, well, that feels too broad, but if that's the exercise for the 13th, then
And
tee it
then,
up that way, kind of.
as Tim said, this is, what you all are doing right now is an example of what I'm hoping the 13th creates the opportunity for everybody in the room to do.
But yeah, it's a, I think, an important responsibility to try to figure out sort of what, at the board level, sort of what's in and what's out, what we're asking Martha to do. It's unfair to ask her to boil the ocean.
Right.
And then be disappointed that we don't like the temperature that the ocean happens to be, kind of thing. And so that's one of the things for me, being part of the strategic plan, I'm always sort of cognizant of. And then back to this organization, both, to me, it's both in-reach and outreach. So we talked a lot about sort of out in the community, what is the brand of the organization, but it also needs to be into our other colleagues on the board about what it is that we think is important, So it's, always both the drumbeat externally and the drumbeat internally. So I hope this is a really safe place for you to sort of vet ideas like this. And then obviously we participate as committee members, and we could participate as board members, so. Anything you have to mention, I do appreciate
This is
it.
it.
This was a
Thank
great
you.
conversation, so
Yeah.
I was very comfortable, confident letting it go over time, but I respect everybody's time as well, unless anybody has anything else on the suggestion.
Just before we close the upcoming things, I wanna just hit 2 things there. Can I briefly say those?
Sure.
So if you have
Thanks,
not
Brad.
registered for PlanRVA Day, which is the second half of the joint annual meeting, I do need you to register. So please go and actually choose a space, because we actually are having you register for one or all 3 of the modules that are a part of PlanRVA Day. So that starts at 12:30. 12:30? Starts at 12:30, 12:15, and goes to 5:30. There's 3 sessions, so you can choose 1, 2, or 3 of them, but you do need to register. So even if you're gonna be here in the morning, you need to register. So if you go to our homepage, there's a banner, PlanRVA Day, go and register. If you're not sure that you have not.
Well, that's not true. I mean, I'm wondering if Susan had, where it's gonna be here all day.
It's okay, I can double check if you'd like, I have access to the registration. The second is the climate pollution reduction grant program, the greenhouse gas reduction. There will be activities for you to engage with within the next week. They're coming, they're just so close to being done. So there will be things that you can specifically engage with and also share, and we'll create some talking points and some images for you all to share. So the website page might not be done by then, so it might actually just be an email at this time, because it is timely and I do want you to share about it. And Jessica, also to your point, resharing on social really does help us. So we're on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, so pick a channel if you'd like. LinkedIn is great because that's where all the professional things live. If you're more comfortable there, that really does help us get into the algorithm better. It really makes a difference when other humans share from our page, so thank you.